The reading is taken from Luke 22, chapters 39 to 46. Then he went out and made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives, accompanied by the disciples. When he reached the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may be spared the test." He himself withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and began to pray. "Father, if it be your will, take this cup from me, yet not my will but yours be done." And now there appeared to him an angel from heaven, bringing him strength, and in anguish of spirit he prayed the more urgently, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and came to the disciples, he found them asleep, worn out by grief. "Why are you sleeping?" he said. "Rise and pray that you may be spared the test."
Well, thank you so much for that reading, Bea. And as we've travelled through this week together, and we've seen Jesus at this critical moment, and he asked his disciples to pray that they would not fall into temptation. As Bea's reading says there, that they would not fail the test and the temptation. And the question that you ask yourselves, do you plan to fall? It's a stupid question, really, isn't it? Like, maybe 11:38 a.m. this morning, I'm going to plan to take a nosedive into the ground and fall flat on my face. But Jesus shows us that the way not to fall into temptation, is remarkably prayer. And you can see that Jesus here is going to be praying so much that he sweats drop bloods as perspiration. It will come out as blood. And the reason he's doing it is that Jesus has made a plan not to fall. You see, he has to go through with the cross. And that cross is the saving of many people. And there's a temptation. We remember the devil tempted him in the desert. But there's a temptation of evil desires. And we must remember that this world has a flowery view of temptation. And they see it's like you're tempted with good things, and it's like, that's not temptation at all. That's just having possibly good desires if they are truly good. Temptation is not a good thing. Temptation means that you have been consumed with evil desires. And it's a place that you don't want to end up in, a place where you've just lost all control. And you're so fixed on greed or selfishness or rebellion or hate or jealousy or bitterness or gossip, and you're consumed by it. And the Bible talks it's like being dragged away by your evil desires, and they entice you, and people say, I've just lost control. I'm no longer in control of what I'm doing anymore. I'm absolutely eaten up. We hear people say that, isn't it? This process of just being, they're gone. And it's called the inner war. And Jesus Christ is having this inner war inside. And like I say, he's going to the cross, but it's at this moment, he's feeling the pain before the pain. Could you imagine having to go to the cross and embrace the nails in your hands and your feet, and your beard is going to be pulled out, and your back is going to be whipped, so much so that your back is opened up and all the muscle tissue is exposed. And on top of that, he's going there knowing he is innocent, that he's doing this for somebody else. Not only is he doing it for somebody else, he's doing it for sinners. Not even for the righteous. He's not came to die for the righteous, but for those who are sinners. And yet, he's making sure, he's galvanizing himself to make sure I'm going to do this. This is a difficult thing, a very difficult thing. And you see that he battles so much so that he prays, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will be done, but yours be done. Jesus is not, what Jesus is doing there is he's making sure he goes. Because he's making sure that, Father, this is your will. And he's clearing the ground of any alternatives, any excuses. And he's hitting the solid ground and saying, this is what the Father wants me to do. And I don't care what my desires are saying. I don't care what all my feelings are saying. And all this explosion. And he was so in much pain. All the thoughts and feelings of the cross was all exploding inside him. That it was pain inside and blood was coming out. But he's making sure, he's planning not to fall. You see, for Jesus to fall would be to say, I'm not going through with the cross. And he's not saying, I want to find a way out. He's saying, Father, is there another way out? But he knows there's not another way out. And the Father knows there's not a way out. So Jesus is basically saying, we know there's not another way out. So let's clear the ground of all these rubbish excuses. Let's clear these ground of all these good excuses that we may have. Let's clear this ground of even righteous excuses that we may think we have. And say, no, this is what I've got to go through. And I'm going to pray that I do not fall into temptation, that I don't go back and revert to my own evil desires and turn away. And that's what Jesus calls us to do. He says, pray that you'll not fall into temptation. Hebrews 12 says this, in your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. You see, Jesus is spotless and pure inside. But there'd be temptations from evil desires that saying, do you want these evil desires? Do you want to embrace them? Whereas us, we're sinful inside, and those evil desires are pulling us and drawing us. And God's saying, you've not resisted those to the point of shedding blood. And you think, well, that's a big resistance. But Jesus resists. Jesus resists that push and that pull against him. And how did he do it? And it's remarkable, the answer, he does it by prayer. What's your plan? When you're consumed with bitterness, when you're consumed with anger, when you're consumed with rage, when you're consumed with laziness, when you're consumed with thoughts of stealing and cheating and lying and scamming and scheming, some people just give in to them and say, I don't care, I'm just going to be consumed by my lusts. But others might try to be clever with it and think there's formulas and intellects or willpower. Jesus shows us an example. No, what you got to do is just pray. Humble yourself and pray. Say, God, this is a big weight upon my shoulders. This is painful inside. Because sometimes going forward with the truth, sometimes going forward with the real outcome and actually loving and doing God's will is painful. And it costs us. And we can fall into temptation to be pulled away from that. But Jesus amazingly shows us what you need to do is pray. When you're consumed with your anger, when you're consumed with your rage, when you're consumed with your own selfish desires, pray. Ask God for help. Just tell him just make it clear for me, God, that this is the way and I'm going to walk in it. You see, Jesus' love for you is so precious that he's willing to suffer to embrace it. It's so much better, it's so much a greater, the blessing that comes to us and the help that comes to us, that Jesus is saying, I'm willing to suffer I'm willing to push back any selfish desires that come this way, any evil desires. I'm pushing it all back because I will embrace the truth that you need saved. And I'm willing that the truth that the spotless Lamb, Jesus, needs to go to the cross. And Jesus says to us, pray that you'll not fall into temptation. He's an example, isn't he? They literally watched him pray that he would not fall into temptation. And Jesus made a plan, an amazing plan to make sure he did not fall and that he would make sure he goes to the cross. We could definitely all follow that example. So God bless you and have a great day.